before we get into that, be sure to check in this QR code. It does count towards your 7 meetings with an ACM member. So yeah, definitely do that. I'll keep this up here actually. Do you guys have the mic?
Where's the mic?
Right here. So you can talk. It's also
Okay.
being streamed.
Oh, it is awesome. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Juan Valadez. I'm a professor here at Computer Science Department. This is my second year here at UTSA. Prior to UTSA, for those of you who don't know me, I was at UIW for 3.5 years. I also taught at St. Mary's back in the mid-2000s. I love education. I love everything about it. But this is not where I'm actually concentrated in, right? I'm an IT consultant, industry expert, and I decided that after years and years and years of being in industry and making good money, I decided, hey, I want to come and teach students the things that I've done, the things that I know how to do. So I'm really big. I mean, if you've had my classes, you've heard me say a lot of stuff before, and it's really, really important. And I actually was just seeing an email from a student, a former colleague of yours, that graduated and got a job, and they're like, hey, I have something going on, and that's great. And I had an email before from another student for same classes. And this is what kind of club is this? It's Coding in Color. So what is it you guys dedicate yourselves to? Minorities? Cool. Excellent. I'm all for that. I mean, obviously, being a Mexican, I am quite the minority. There's a lot of barriers for us, and that's true, right? And but I want to make sure that I impress this message on you. Like, don't let that define who you are, right? I use that as a gauge for me and how to advance my career. I've always been very agnostic to race, just because where I come from, I mean, being very poor, I lived on the streets when I got to the States. Dumpster diving was a very big part of my life as a 7-year-old trying to get food. That's what we had to do. And that's what we had. And so it kind of fed the fire that I have to continually work and try harder. And we all have our own struggles, right? That's a very real thing. I start every semester by talking about struggles in mental health. And a lot of students, a lot of your colleagues, they reach out to me in my class and say, hey, you know what? I'm having a really difficult week. Can I be out? Of course, absolutely. You can absolutely be out, right? Because everyone has their own path. Everyone has the things that they're going through. And, for us, it's that much more, right? Many of us are first-time college, first-generation college students. I'm imagining that as the case for you all in here. Same thing for me, obviously. Became a citizen, and that's the first-generation thing for us. And so there's a lot of challenges that presents, right? But one of the really great things about that is that it allows us to have different perspectives on the same thing. And I use that in my career. I use that because it's all about challenges and challenges and challenges, right? When you graduate and you start your career as an actual computer scientist, or whatever you're going to find yourself doing, the challenges are still going to be there. They're just going to be different. It's not about school, and it's not about getting this homework done or trying to do 4 different projects for 4 different classes, or however many different classes you're taking. It's a different kind of challenge. It's a challenge where you're going to try to look into yourself and find out, am I really good enough to do this? Is this really what I'm going to be doing? Am I really, is this really what I'm about, right? And that's part of the redefining yourself and redefining yourself. And I really, I think that's great, because we have this really interesting perspective on our career, on our life. Like I said, a lot of us come from, different backgrounds that aren't as, I don't want to say privileged, but honestly, that's kind of what I see it. A lot of, I had to earn what I had, right? I was never given anything. And sometimes I think that if I were, maybe it would have been easier for me, if I had my parents pay for college, because they would have had money, or I wouldn't have all of these loans, and but it might have been different. But I don't know. I think I will say this for those of you who know, my son Patrick. He graduated from UTSA, and he's working now in Colorado, loving his life. I talk to him at least once a week, and he's always calling me about special. He's always calling me about, hey, Dad, this was a situation. He actually just called me 2 days ago. He had his first fight in his group, and he was very, very fired up, and he was very, very emotional and very. I could hear it in his voice. And he's like, I think I messed up. I might have said the wrong things, and I want to know your opinion on that. And it was really interesting because Patrick's a very special case for me. He enjoyed a lot of things that I didn't have. I worked really, really hard to get to where I'm at. I worked really hard to put myself through school. Mind you, not only was I a first generation college student, I was also married at 17. I had a kid at 17. Oh yeah, absolutely. I was a kid with kids. It was challenging. It was really, really, really hard. And so I had to worry about going to school and helping raise my son and working to provide for my family because I didn't have help. I didn't have any of that. So when Patrick comes around and goes to college, and I told him, hey, listen, you're going to come to school. I'm going to pay for everything. I'm going to give you a monthly stipend, but you must in turn give me good grades. And of course, that didn't happen. He basically blew through his first year of me having to pay for everything, and he learned the hard way that he had to. I think it was good though. I think it was good for him because he realized that now he's on the hook for all of this, and it paid off. It paid off really well. And he actually told me not too long ago, was like, Dad, I have this red couch in my office. It's this beautiful leather red couch that I love. And he hates that couch because every time I made him sit on that couch, it's because he was in trouble. And he one time told me, Dad, I freaking hate this couch. Why do I have to sit here? I'm like, well, stop giving me reasons for you to sit here. Like, make it a good thing. But he made it a bad thing. But all of these things are basically part of his struggle. They're part of his path. And I'm saying these things because we all have this path that we're following. You're all here because you want to be here. You're all here because something about this field interests you. And it's such a large field. There's so many different things you can do. And, I think by all accounts, I shouldn't be here. I was actually told by my high school counselor when I was applying for colleges. She's like, oh, no, you're not going to college. That's not for you. You have a kid and you're married. Like, people like you, just go and get a job and don't even bother wasting your money on college applications. Because back then, we had to pay for each application for college. It was like $75 or $50 per college. And there weren't programs about free anything. You had to pay for that. And I was kind of offended by this, and I thought to myself, wow, that's the advice the counselor's telling me, to not do something. And you're going to be presented with a lot of that stuff. I don't know why. I don't have another point of view other than mine, but maybe the race difference between her not being Hispanic and me being Hispanic was a thing, because I spoke to other friends of mine who were the same race as her, and she was like telling them, oh yeah, for sure, Stanford and MIT, let's do this, right? And I thought, wow, that's interesting. But I was married and I did have a kid, and that's not something that most high school kids are supposed to be doing. And back then, by the way, we didn't like get an awesome show on MTV about teenage parent. No. I lost all my friends, but two of them, all about two friends. I was a social pariah, because that was a bad thing back then. Like, you just didn't do that in the 90s. And if you did, you were like untouchable. You were definitely, nobody wanted to be around you. So my point is that there are going to be a lot of roadblocks in your way. And that's not the problem. The problem, or the problem is if you decide that roadblock is something that you're going to let it derail you, right? She wasn't going to derail my path. Instead, she was going to, I used it to push myself even harder and harder and harder. And it's to the point where, like right now, I can't not be doing 4 different things at the same time, 4 different income streams at the same time. And I just push myself to the limit because to me, that's just how I am. That's something that it's going to continue. Should I just leave it off? All right. And it's a really fun thing to think about for me when I actually, I don't know if y'all know this, but I gave the commencement speech at St. Mary's in the spring, and I talked to them a lot about this, and so it's kind of cool that you have me up here talking. I talked to them about all of this and about all of the roadblocks. Even in college, I faced a lot of roadblocks, a lot of pushback from what I wanted to do and what I thought was my path, and I could have let it just be the end of it and say, you know what, all right, I'm gonna just stop, and I need to just give up on my dreams and give up on what I want to do. But I chose not to. I chose the difficult road, and this is what you all are doing right now. This is difficult, right? You're studying, you're struggling in your classes, especially if you're some of y'all who taken my classes. I mean, I've been told I'm not an easy professor, which is, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because I think I'm easy. I think the stuff's easy, but then again, I've been doing this for a long time. And you're gonna be presented with those challenges, and you know it doesn't define us. It's going to inspire us, and it should. It should. You know, this is a really interesting world we live in, and even more so now than ever. When I first got to the States, I didn't speak English, and I was told to go back to Mexico quite a lot. I heard it again 5 years ago, actually. I was in Fredericksburg, and I was told to go back to Mexico, which is kind of funny because, I mean, I do every year, and it's on me, but I come back. I'm a citizen, so it's a challenge sometimes because this world is very, very polarized, and we have to find our place in this world. And for you young kids, I mean, I think it's more challenging than ever because y'all have so much pressure. We didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones. If somebody wasn't home, you just didn't talk to them. We had answering machines with tape, and if the tape got full, that was it. You couldn't leave a message. And for all of you, I think all of this contact and all this stuff can be damaging. You hear a lot about cyberbullying. You hear a lot about everything. And I mean, the only thing I had to deal with actual bullying. I got bullied in high school because I was a nerd. Big thick glasses and backpack, and it was just part of what it is. By the way, I met some of my bullies not too long ago. They didn't age too well, and so I'm like, hey, it's all right. Life has a way of coming back to people, I think, but it makes us better, right? I want to talk about not just that, because I think that's important to hear. It's interesting that when I talk about mental health, a lot of students people we don't hear about it as much, and we really should. And I talk about my upbringings and where I came from, and some things that I get pushed back on, because I think even still there's a lot of stereotypes about how Mexicans are lazy and all this other stuff, and I hear it a lot, and people make fun of that stuff, and that's my people. It's literally where I'm from, right? I'm from Guadalajara, Jalisco, and yes, we do take our siestas at around 3 p.m. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, I know why this is the case, because in the town where my father grew up in, is called Encarnacion de Diaz. Every day, at 3 p.m., the whole town shuts down. From 3 to 4:30, everything's closed. It's their siesta time. I'm not even kidding. It's real. And like, if you didn't eat and if you didn't go to the supermarket, you got to wait until at least 5 o'clock, which is super weird to me. I thought it was like, because in Guadalajara we don't do that, but in that little town, yeah, shut down. Who cares? It's interesting. So these struggles, they don't go away just because you graduate high school, you graduate college. They don't go away just because you're a professional. They're very real. They're very real things that we have to still deal with, right? And you know, we don't really talk about that stuff either. So how do you deal with that? How do you, as a young professional, as a student moving into an actual professional, how do you deal with that? How do you cope? And the way you cope is like this: is a support group, peers talking about, hey, these are struggles we're having. You know, these are things that I'm suffering. You know, some of you may at one point or another have suffered where you didn't know where you were going to eat. Maybe you didn't have money to eat. Maybe you didn't have a resource you needed. Maybe you felt scared because, you know, you were like at the very last bit of your resources, or whatever those would be. And then you started questioning, well, what am I supposed to do from here? What can I do from here? And, you know, obviously you're here to prevent that from happening in the future, right? You don't want to, you don't want to live life questioning whether or not you can feed yourself, or if you have children or that kind of stuff. You have to, you're working hard right now to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. We're working hard right now to make sure that whatever we suffered, those who come after us don't have to suffer the same thing. I made sure that my kids never have to know what it's like to be 6, 7, 8 years old and being in dumpsters for food. I tasted my very first Snicker in a dumpster, by the way. It was delicious. I found a litter of kittens in a dumpster one time. Somebody threw away kittens, and I saved them. My mom got all mad because, like, we can't feed ourselves, and you brought kittens home. But I made sure that I did something to make sure that my children never, ever have to do that. Never, ever have to know what it's not like to have a house, right? Not to have a place to sleep, sleeping on the street or in a car for any prolonged period of time, And so I want to make sure that whatever it is that you're going through or you went through, that you don't just forget about it, that you remember it, so that way you can make it better, not just for yourself, but for those they're going to come after you, your children, your significant other. And that's super important, right? I think you've heard me say, for those of you who have me classes, your career is not defined by what you study in class. It's not. It's by what you do outside of class. This is one of those things. These clubs, these organizations, these extracurricular activities, they are part of who you're going to be as a professional. You're going to have conversations in here, conversations that are very much about being who we are, right? Being not part of the majority, even in the school in general, right? Computer science is not part of the majority. There are a lot of, business students, and y'all know that you have your own clique just because no one else can relate to you. Like, they don't know what you're going through, so they can't really relate on a scholastic level. But that's important. In the classes you're taking, I always say, hey, listen, the stuff you're learning in class, that's the starting point to what you should really be learning. And everything else is on you, on you, on you. I'm your instructor, but I'm not your teacher. You are your teacher, because you're the one who knows how you learn. I don't know how you learn. I'm just going to show you the way. I'm going to give you a path, and then you're going to take that and run with it. I told that to my son, Michael, when he was complaining about his teachers in high school. I'm like, no, that's not their fault. It's not their job to teach you. How can somebody who has a class of 50 teach all of them when they don't? They're 50 different individuals. I can show you. No, had halls. I fell on my arm. That's cool. I caught it. I can show you information, but all of you are going to dissect it and interpret it different ways. And that's part of our upbringing, right? That's part of all of the experiences that we have that we talked about. And I think that's really, really important, because whether you know it or not, these extra things that you're doing outside of school, they define this career. They define you, who you are as a professional. And these things are gonna be marketable to jobs, like to employment. You're gonna be able to say, hey, um, I can do all of these other things, and I have these other skills aside from just having this degree. Because the degree doesn't really mean much. If I'm being completely honest, the computer science degree or this degree or that degree, at the end of the day, nobody really cares. Nobody cares where you went to school. Nobody cares about your GPA. Nobody cares about the classes you took. What they care about is what do you bring to the table, right? All things considered, all computer science programs across the entire country are the exact same. Look at them. They all have the same courses. They all have the same everything. The biggest difference is what can you bring to the table? What did you do with your time? Not in class, but outside of class. Something like this. What did you do to research on your own? What did you do to give yourself that step up above everyone else? One of the things that I had going for me that you all don't is that back in the 90s, we didn't have as big competition that we have now, right? Jobs in the United States were not typically open for anyone outside of the United States. We didn't have competition from Japan or China or India or any other foreign country. We just didn't have that. It changed a lot. And a lot of the reason is because the kind of jobs that are in demand, for some strange reason, people here in the United States just don't want to do them. They just don't want to become doctors anymore. They don't want to become engineers and computer scientists anymore. So every year, you all become less and less and less the majority, right? Because more and more people want to do other things that are not STEM. But the problem is those STEM jobs aren't going away. They're getting more and more and more and more. And that's actually pretty good for everybody, right? Because that means, hey, I think I'm in the right field to be in demand and make a good living. So I want you to think about that. Even if this is your last semester, you still have time to learn more outside of class, to be like, hey, I don't have any idea what this is. That's what you should study. That's what you should learn. I have all these skills here, but I have no skills here in this particular field. This is the stuff I need to learn because this is the stuff that's also going to be in demand. I know you've heard, I say Patrick a lot because I pick on him a lot. His job came from the fact that he on his own, for the last 2 semesters of his school career, was all about studying image processing and on video cards, and that's what he does now. That's his expertise. And he was telling me, when we talked 2 days ago, that the senior guy that is his boss, who's been doing this for 25 years, told him, hey, so I'm going to retire in like 3 years. So you're the guy that's replacing me. And I'm like, wow, no pressure, right? No, seriously. He was like, Dad, what am I supposed to do? I'm like, do the best you can. You got him for 3 years. Like, you absorb as much information as possible, and then you become that person, because then that means you have a job forever, right? Until you no longer want that job. But he was kind of, he was intimidated by that. Like, I'm supposed to be the guy in 3 years. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, right? And that's going to be all of you, right? You're going to be that person that says, hey, I'm going to be the expert. But that doesn't come just from doing what you're told. It comes from going above and beyond what you're told, to do all these other things, right? And I know what you're thinking, like, how am I supposed to do that? I'm taking 18 hours. I'm taking, some of you all taking even more than 18 hours, which is really tough. And yeah, it is, right? But understand that the limit is whatever you say it is, right? And for me, I've always pushed it further and further and further. But I'm not going to say that you should just sacrifice everything in the sake of knowledge. Absolutely not. I'm always going to be a big cheerleader for mental health, right? Yes, all this stuff is important. Yes, learn as much as you possibly can. but don't ever stop taking care of yourself. Like, understand that it's all right to have bad days. Those bad days are going to happen, right? I lost my father 2 years ago, and sometimes I miss him so much. He was my best friend. He was actually, had life gone his way, he would have been an engineer too. But his parents both died when he was 17. At the same time, they weren't there anymore. So we had to stop, drop out of school, provide for his 6 sisters that were little. I mean, he gave up his entire life for that. But I mean, he was always fixing things. So he was always breaking things and trying to fix them with silicone. Like, he loved that stuff. For him, oh, silicone will fix it. And I think about him all the time because, those little bottles of clear silicone to fix it, that was his thing. And you found it everywhere. And it drove my mom nuts. But, I miss him a lot. And those are those challenges that life is tough. And sometimes I got to take a break. Sometimes I just need to take a day and say, hey, today is not my day. And it's just a bad day. It's not a bad life. And you got to remember that. You got to remember that all of you sitting here, you have your own struggles, right? You've got your successes, and that's fantastic. But you have your struggles too. And you shouldn't let that take away from your success. And it's totally okay to pause and say, I need a break. I need a break. In 2017, I was so stressed out, so overworked, so many things going on. I took 9 months off. I didn't do anything for 9 months. I stayed home and I didn't do squat, nothing for 9 straight months. I just sat there, watched TV, played with my son because he was, about a year old, and he was finally able to play, and it was cool. And that was very eye-opening for me, because think about it. I didn't work for 9 months. That means I had to have money saved up for that much. And I had plenty because I worked really hard to get there. And that brings me to my other point. Patrick was telling me, because he's making big bucks according to him now. And I'm like, that's cute. That's, he's making good money, He's just under 6 figures, but he's all excited. I'm like, oh, that's super cool. I'm happy for you. But he's like, Dad, I have so much money. And the other day, I went out and I bought myself all this stuff, and it was like $2,300. And I freaked out a little bit. But then I realized, oh, wait, I have money for that. I'm like, yeah, you do. Remember that you're working hard for something. So enjoy your success. Don't feel guilty about being successful. Be proud of it, and if you can, share it with others. I'm very big on giving back. I donate a lot of money to St. Mary's because that's my alma mater, and I'm very big on I was there. Somebody gave money for me to have money to take. It's time for me to put back. And you're going to get to the point in your career when you're going to decide, hey, I want to start giving back. And don't forget about that. Don't forget about giving back. And you don't have to give back financially. It could be, hey, you have an expertise in something. I'm going to help this person out. Or you're an expert in here. Let me help you out. Let me give you knowledge. I would much rather receive knowledge than money, because knowledge is something that can never, ever be taken away from me. Money, I didn't have it when I was born. I'm not going to have it when I die, right? It's something, it's a utility. But knowledge, that's the real value right there. And that's really what you should take out of this, right? What knowledge am I going to take out of my time here at UTSA? And if you go to graduate school, what are you going to take out of that? And even when you go to get a job, everywhere that I've gone, I've left because I'm no longer growing. The moment I'm done growing is the moment I got to get out of that job. Time for a new challenge, which is kind of why I like consulting, right? Consulting is all about new fires to put out every single time, and I freaking love that. I think, to me, that's fantastic. A lot of people can't handle the stress, but I thrive on that stress. It's challenging. It's a lot of work. It's hard work, but it's a lot of really well-paid work, right? And I can't speak enough about being my own boss. Like, that's the life right there. Just, you decide when you work, how you work, where you work. I can work literally anywhere as long as an internet connection, and I'm good to go. And I think that's kind of what you should think about, for those of you who are getting ready to graduate, for those of you who are getting ready to start your careers, right? Is don't stop learning just because you're out of school, right? Don't do that. You're always going to need to grow professionally, personally, right? And that's a very loaded concept. There's so many different things that have to do with. You scared me. I'll hit the corner. Okay. Scared me. I was like, what happened? And so be open-minded to that. I told you that I didn't think I was supposed to be here. Well, even in college, I honestly thought I was going to be designing graphics processors. I created one. That was my senior design from scratch. The whole thing. Microcontroller, everything, assembly language, everything. I made it. First tablet before tablets existed. I did it. You don't believe me? Go check it out. St. Mary's. I published a book. It's all there. And it's interesting because me and my partner, when we did it, we thought, man, we should have patented this, but we didn't, because that year the patent office changed their patent filing fee from 500 to 10,000. Yeah, I know. They did it and basically we couldn't afford that, so we didn't even bother. It was pretty cool. But that's what I thought I was going to be doing. But remember how I told you that it's what you do outside of school that defines your career? Well, it turns out that the entire time I was studying engineering, I was also working with Unix systems and working on servers and working with, web development and a lot of stuff that wasn't even part of what I was studying. And it turned out I was really, really good at it. And I made an entire career out of it. Excuse me. Of course, I continued my education, but really, if you were to ask me what part of my actual degree I'm using in my job, zero. I don't work on transistors and resistors and capacitors. I don't work on anything like that. I don't work on assembly. I don't work on anything. I mean, hardware design language or anything. That's what I studied, and that's what I'm passionate about. But everything that I do was all of those hours I spent in the lab researching how web servers work and how networks work, and researching everything about Unix systems and Linux systems and all of that. Databases, that was huge. That's my career. Do I think I wasted my time in engineering? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't think that I'd be able to understand and dissect the information had it not been for that education. But I still learn. I mean, I still love learning new things. There's a new language that's coming out, or that came out, called Rust. I'm looking into it. It's interesting. The syntax is not something that I find too pleasant, but it is what it is, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about seeing how I can use that for me, and then for you. And that's really my career, right? At the end of the day, I took opportunities. I made opportunities. I studied as much as I could. I had an open mind about situations and education. And I think that's one of the things that I really admire about all of your faces here, is this open-mindedness. Have an open mind, right? And I think, those are keys to success. Oh, here's another key to success. This is a big one, really big one. I mind my own business. I've been minding my business since 2010. Couldn't be happier. Highly recommend it. Do that. Seriously. Like, I only control what I can control and nothing else. And I don't worry about anything else. And to me, that there's some peace in that. And that is just, it's great. I love it. I love this. I love life. And I don't know if you guys have any questions for me, but that's, yeah, if you have any questions. Yes.
So in tech, I know tech it's changed a lot. I think every year it's almost like brand new. But I know burnouts they start from the industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mixture of you don't know where to stop and you want to keep going and growing and growing and growing. And there's also the mixed play. There's also a lot going on. Everything.
Mhm.
You want to learn everything, but like more just like how do you go about like not letting yourself out in a more like professional, like you still have to get your job done.
Right. So it's burnout's a real thing, right? And his question was, how do you go about learning without burning out, right? So what we're doing is a skill like anything else, right? And what you need to do is you need to be actually dedicating time of your day to say, okay, from this time to this time, I'm going to dedicate to learning this, and be very, very strict about it. One of the challenges is not that you don't have that you won't do it. It's that you won't want to stop. That's the biggest challenge for me. I actually had a schedule in my day where from like 6 to 8 o'clock, I researched and I read from my books, and I looked at different topics. The problem was that it was like 8:30 and I didn't want to stop. You have to be very strict about that, right? Burnout is a big issue. So what you want to do is you want to be very deliberate with your time and say, hey, this is my schedule. From this time to this time, I'm going to learn this skill, or I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to do it for this amount of time. It's like if you're wanting to learn a new language, you have to dedicate time every single day to practice it, and only that time. And then you can practice later. It's when you go to the gym. For those of you who like to work out, you're not going to work out 24 hours a day. You're going to hurt yourself. Well, this is the same thing. Burnout is mental exhaustion, which is still hurting yourself. So you have to time. It's called time management, right? And you really have to be serious about it, and schedule that, and be very, very deliberate with that. Yes.
So has there ever been a point in coming from college to an industry where somebody just like didn't believe you just based on like you think like this guy doesn't know these songs?
Oh yeah.
And how did you deal with it?
Well, I let my work speak for itself. One of the challenges that I found is that when people say Valadez, like last night I was playing poker, and this guy goes, "Oh, how's the coffee business?" Because Juan Valdez is a Colombian icon for coffee. I'm like, first of all, I won't even ask you to guess what kind of person he was, but it's Valadez, not Valdez, and I let my work speak for myself, right? It's all about having somebody tell you no and saying, all right, well, this is a solution. You need to check it out. If you know better, here, look at this. I had a lot of people. I actually, this is something you're going to actually face. You're young. So people are going to think, what does this young kid know? This young punk doesn't know anything. You don't know what you're talking about. That's definitely a very big type of discrimination too. Like, what? Don't, no, 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 no. You shouldn't be seeing my age. You should be seeing my skill. And that's how you approach that. You let your work speak for itself, right? I never ever confront people about any of their stereotypes or anything like that. Like every time somebody tells me to go to Mexico, I turn it into a joke. I'm not going to go and confront them and be upset. And that's what they want. They want you to engage. You take the higher road. And that's the kind of stuff that, we learn from. Like, say, hey, you know what? Thanks for letting me know how I never want to be with somebody else. Because guess what? One of these days, you all are going to be the old guy, the old girl, and you're going to be like, oh, it's my turn to let the young people come in. And these young people are going to think they know everything. And some of them do, and some of them don't, right? And so what I've done in those situations, because it's been many, many times where there was my youth that was a problem back in the day, not now, obviously, but back in the day, or the fact that I don't speak English really well. And or the fact that I'm not of a certain color. Cool. Listen, that's a you problem, but I'm here to solve this problem. So you focus on the work at hand, and you learn and you grow from that. And you grow from that, and one of two things is going to happen. They're going to accept it, and eventually you, which has happened, or they're not going to, and then you're going to just move on and move on to the next job, move on to the next problem, and move on to the next situation. And that's how you learn from that. You don't want to engage in that. You just want to be objective and not subjective. Good question, though. Yes.
You said doing things about setting yourself apart from like the rest of the workforce, what are like specific things you can do to, like, especially when going into internships or
Mhm.
entry-level jobs? What are things that like can really set you apart? Certification or projects?
Specifically, I can tell you right now that a lot of you are lacking Linux skills. Hardcore, like absolutely. And I'm not talking GUI Linux, I'm talking CLI server based Linux stuff. You want to set yourself apart, understand the technology that makes this world work. Linux is definitely one of them, right? I'm teaching an enterprise software class, and the database skills there are abysmal, right? But you have to pick up these skills that you don't know. And I know right now a lot of my colleagues out in the industry, they're upset that you guys aren't taught these things. Like you're not really. One of the things that Patrick had going for him, he'd been using Linux command line for like 4 years. So for him, it was like nothing. He was already very, very versed in Bash and shell scripting and Python scripts and, excuse me, all on command line. Out of the 75 people that they're interviewing for that position, well, there were 3 people they were going to hire. He was one of 3. And a lot of them were because you had the skills for this. You already knew the command environment. You already knew our environment. You already knew some of the technology we were using. I mean, all these things that he already had that weren't explicitly taught here in school, right? But if you want to be putting yourself apart, just learn the foundations, learn the basics. And if it's just Linux, that alone will open you up to other things like, oh, well, what about web servers? Well, take a look at Nginx or take a look at Apache, right? Or what about application services like Python or PHP or Node.js or whatever? These are important things. These are technologies that every single industry will need in some way, shape, or form. So if you already know about these really well, that's a position right there. That's a job right there. They'll hire you just for that, and everything else you'll just learn along the way. So absolutely, that's a good question. Anybody else? Oh, yes. My first job was a Unix systems administrator. I was the admin for all the Sun Solaris machines as a systems administrator in Unix, right? So command line and knowing how to set them up, all about servers and how they network together. That was my first job, and I loved it. It was so much fun. I definitely could do that. I could see myself going back to that because to me, it was a sort of a passion thing because that kind of branched me out to a bunch of other things. Did you have a question?
So did you ever feel like imposter syndrome? And if you did, how did you get through it?
I still feel imposter syndrome. Are you kidding me? All the time. I'm like, man, I still feel like I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Okay, cool. Let's do something that doesn't exist, right? To this day, I still doubt myself. I still feel like if you don't doubt yourself, that you're probably need to move to something else because I don't know everything. And that's why I have imposter syndrome. And when I think about it, I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. Because the moment I feel like I know everything, that's the moment I know I'm done. And I need to just become a baker or something because I'm in the wrong industry. But imposter syndrome doesn't go away. And it's something that is very real for all of us, right? And I think that shouldn't be a scary thing. That should be kind of like, okay, cool, I'm gonna change this, or I'm gonna learn everything I can about whatever it is that. But every time I get a brand new client or a new thing, I'm like, man, I don't even know if I can do all this stuff. I already said yes, but I got to figure it out because they're gonna pay me. So yeah, it's. I just kind of remind myself that yeah, I might not know what they want specifically, but I have all the training and the skill and all the experience to figure it out, right? And my Google skills are top notch, by the way. So that's a lot of the tech. They're top notch. Any other questions? Nope. Oh yes.
I have a more specific question. Is there like a specific format that your resume should have when applying for CS jobs?
Yeah, what you want to do is you want to make sure that so resumes are super important, right? And one of the things about resumes is that they have to have keywords because they have to filter through the HR people. First, they have to go through the recruiters, then the HR, and then finally the actual the tech review. And in your resume, you want to make sure that no more than one page. Anything more than that, and you're not going to get through to anybody else. You save that extended resume if they ask for like, hey, well, can we see more work? The reason you want to do that is because you want to be as direct as possible, right? So I had a student I met with about 3 weeks ago, and we looked at his resume, and he had all these experiences or all of these technologies that he knew about, but they weren't listed anywhere on the resume. Well, these resumes are fed through databases that look for keywords. So if you're missing these keywords, you're going to miss out on a lot of jobs. Cloud should be up there if you know about cloud, right? Development. Okay, what does that mean? What languages? C, C++, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, all that should be on there. You should have a very deliberate list of things you've worked on because that will get you through, right? Certifications can come in handy. So if you have certification, by all means, put it on there, but they're not the end all be all. Especially as you get higher and higher and higher in your career, nobody cares. Nobody asks me for any of my certifications I've had because, first of all, I used to be a Sun certified system admin. Ask me if Sun Microsystems still exist. No. Does that certification? Nobody cares because that company doesn't exist anymore. And it's not about getting certified in a particular company's platform. It's about the knowledge. And so that's what your resume should have. Be very, very, very specific about databases. Okay, does that mean MySQL, MS SQL, Postgres? What databases, right? MongoDB, all that you should list. So don't just be talking about a technology, but specifically what? Because that's what employers want to see. Because then they'll tell them, oh, they know our platform. Look, he's got it here. Let's ask him these questions. Of course, on the flip side of that, don't just put it for the sake of putting it, because then you're going to look really, really foolish when you can't answer questions. So it's really important. Anybody else?
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming out. If you guys have any questions about anything, you can create it on Discord. I'll be here after the meeting, and I'll put up the check-in and you can check. Yeah. Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Absolutely.
this.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.